We've been talking about a lot of positions for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the draft, but should we be focusing on linebacker more? That's here on Locked On Steelers. I'm your host, Chris Carter, joined by Alan Saunders today. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. A reminder, the Locked On Steelers podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network. As I said before, we're joined by the man himself, Alan Saunders. He's back from SteelersNow.com. Alan, you made a point earlier on Monday, we're recording this Monday evening, about the Steelers' current interests in their top 30 visits at the linebacker position. Now, I continue to say, and we'll get into this in a little bit, some of the top 30 visits they brought in have been peculiar for me, particularly because I've been looking for certain names to pop up at certain positions, and I have been seeing those names just yet. We have plenty of time, less than a month now, before the draft itself, so there's time for those things to happen. But linebacker, the Steelers have brought in now, or scheduled at least to bring in 3 linebackers in the for top 30 visits. Granted, one of them is a local visit, but we've been doing a lot of talking about wide receiver, cornerback, safety, guard, maybe some tackle, defensive tackle. Those have been the positions we've talked about. Quarterback we've put way off, but is linebacker maybe a bigger area the Steelers are going to target, especially on maybe day 1 or day 2 of this draft class that's being a little overlooked?
I do think it's being overlooked because it's not really a need, right? They've got the top 5 linebackers from last season all back under contract. And usually when you think about the positions the team is going to target in the draft, usually it's either a big need or it's part of the obvious long-term vision. And I don't think linebacker really fits into either of those boxes, but it is a position where the future, I would say, is not exactly settled, right? Patrick Queen entering the last year of his contract, Malik Harrison entering the last year of his contract, Payton Wilson didn't necessarily take the step forward in 2025 that I think a lot of people in the Steelers were hoping that he would. We looked at this team do these sort of big picture rebuilds on the offensive line and on the defensive line, and they're probably still not done with those tasks. But the linebacker room certainly could use that attention as well. And when you look at these visits, 3 pre-draft visits to Pittsburgh. Also had at least 3 NFL Combine formals with linebackers. They have been at 1 pro day so far with Mike McCarthy and Omar Khan, and that was to Georgia, where C.J. Allen is probably the only guy they will be able to take in the first round if they want to. So there's a lot adding up to the Steelers seem interested in linebacker, and it is a very, very good linebacker class, so that fits. It is definitely not one of their top needs. But I do think, it's just so hard to say. We have so little to go on in terms of what these things that we used to know what they meant, what they mean, right?
Right.
Our top 30 visits, very important. Is the GM and the head coach going to the pro day important? Or is that not going to be something that matters with Omar Khan and Mike McCarthy? We don't really know, but when you look at what they've shown us in terms of their interest, it certainly seems like we ought to be paying attention to linebacker, if not in the first round, at least early on.
This has been my thing, and I've said this a lot, because, some people are like, Chris, you say when you know stuff all the time. I'm telling y'all, I do not know what trends are going to be just popping up. I don't know if you're going to see the same trends pop up, and that eventually, a month from now, there will be, pro day visits where Mike McCarthy and Omar Khan were present together, and then matches up with, their formal interviews. And if it's like, okay, the breadcrumbs were lined up the way that we saw them line up often when Tomlin and Khan, or Tomlin and Colbert, when those trends were really established that we kind of got used to. If those same rules will apply to how this front office works with this coaching staff to select these draft picks, I don't know if that's going to work. And so that's what we're kind of doing, is just kind of looking this one step at a time and saying, hey, this is how they're approaching this right now. Is this, how are they going to keep this going? I'm curious right now, Alan, about that, and if that's going to be a thing. And this linebacker position is one of those where I'm like, okay, they're putting an investment here. They've also brought in 3 late round cornerbacks. Well, actually, no, not late round. Chris Johnson's definitely at least a second rounder, but guys that I don't look at like, oh yeah, that's a guy that they're gonna like. That's a guy they should definitely bring in the first round. I mean, looking at their prospects, like the top guys, like the guys that I have highest ranked on my big board, like overall, Chris Johnson, Keelan Rutledge, maybe Markel Bell, Denzel Boston, I think is my highest actually, but still, like I thought we'd see a bit more of those guys, that a bit more of a nailing, especially in the positions where they definitely still have a need. I think it's kind of interesting here. And linebacker, whereas I've always said, like, hey, they could take a linebacker, but to me, that's like 4th or 5th on the list of, man, if they could get this right in this draft class, it would do so much for them.
It is, but it's probably also top to bottom the second best position in this draft. Maybe the best.
Ooh,
like compared to normal, I guess I would say. I mean, we're talking about 2 linebackers going to the top 5, maybe top 10 for sure.
Good point.
Like, when was the last time we had that conversation? And some more scattered throughout the first round, and a bunch more on day 2. I think is a very good and deep linebacker class. And I could see linebacker as a best player available at a lot of points for the Steelers. I don't think it will be in the first round, but anytime after the first round, it's hard to write off linebacker as being the best player available because it is so strong in this draft class.
I'm going to go off the top of my head here. I can do some quick research and get this in the break, but I believe the last time 2 linebackers were taken in the top 10 was the legendary Devin linebacker draft, where Devin White and then Devin Bush were taken. And we know how that worked out for both of those teams. It did not work in their favor. It's not very good. But
I like these Ohio State guys a little bit better, but
a little bit.
I still like, it is not a draft where the top of the class is very strong. And that's why you're seeing guys at non-traditional positions like linebacker, like safety in the case of Downs, like guard, even, because you've seen the way Venga has gone up the board. I think because the top of this draft is not very strong, you are seeing linebacker and other sort of non-premium positions being elevated, and it is just such a very good linebacker class. So, I mean, they're clearly doing their due diligence, and I think it would be foolish not to be thinking it's a possibility, really anywhere, but especially anywhere after the first round.
While you said that, I did do a quick look. The last time that 2 linebackers went in the top 10 indeed was 2019, and that's just off-ball linebackers. But that's kind of crazy to think about. But all in all, I want to take a closer look at this draft class and the linebacker prospects. It's not a position that I've studied nearly as closely as I have the wide receiver prospects, but I have been keeping my eyes on some of these guys. I've seen, particularly the Steelers have brought in Kyle Lewis firsthand plenty of time. I covered him a lot at Pitt. I want to get Alan's thoughts on where the strengths of this linebacker class lies, who he'd be excited to see also added to the Steelers top 30 visits, and who else should be looked out for in this draft class. We're going to do all of that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders. Stick with us. Be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by TurboTax. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're going to get a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax expert on the spot. And just like that, you're done. TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and being a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to TurboTax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment today only at TurboTax. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, let's keep it rolling on the linebacker class now. As you mentioned, there's two linebackers way at the top of this draft class at Ohio State, Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, who kind of, set a different kind of tone at the linebacker position and most likely will be way out of the Steelers' range to even really reasonably trade up to get. Arvell Reese, some see as the Micah Parsons of this class, where he's, playing off-ball linebacker, but he could switch into an edge. He can kind of be that guy. Maybe he is that guy. Sonny Styles, though, he looks like just the ultimate freak of nature, potentially the Ryan Shazier of this class, with just, he's huge, he's fast, he's explosive, he seems like a leader, he's just a complete alpha dog at the linebacker position. So you have those two guys way at the top. But then there's CJ Allen out of Georgia. He's more of a late first round prospect, depending on where you really like him. But CJ Allen, when I look at him, he looks like he could be a green dot, but he looks like he could be a green dot that's primarily a run thumper. He plays downhill a lot. He's less of the coverage linebacker style that can run with guys deeper downfield. Is that a problem with the skill set the Steelers have right now, or should they be looking at a closer look at CJ Allen as, hey, if we trade back and the value's there, he'd be reasonable to take?
Yeah, I think he is a good fit next to Payton Wilson. I think he is a big enough guy that he's a 3-down player and can excel on run downs. I like him in man coverage. Zone probably needs some work. He's not necessarily like the shiftiest guy. But I think he's a big, strong linebacker that has really good instincts. Good blitzer. I think that's something that when you look at what Patrick Graham has done in his past, I think we're going to see more blitzing from the linebackers especially. So that's probably something they should look for. I'm not necessarily sure I see like a star. You know what I mean? I think I see like a really, really, really good player. I don't know. I think if in a trade back scenario, I think he's a very good pick. At 21, I think they can probably do better, but I don't think it would be a bad choice. I just have a hard time seeing him being the best player on the board at 21.
The guys after him kind of falls down the board a bit, but the Steelers brought in a guy that was a big talking point going into the Senior Bowl, Texas Tech linebacker Jacob Rodriguez. Got to talk to him there, and he seemed like an interesting player. But they've also brought in Kyle Lewis, the guy who was the best linebacker at the Senior Bowl. He had a pretty strong week there. Now Jacob Rodriguez, another leader type on the field there, but another guy, Cincinnati's Jake Golday, has kind of been propping up, a 6'4", 240 linebacker here. There's other guys, some people really like Anthony Hill, 6'3" linebacker out of Texas, for his athleticism. You and I talked about Bryce Betcher and how we liked him out of Oregon, looking at the Senior Bowl and some of the plays he was making. When you're looking at that second, fringing into third tier, I guess CJ Allen's kind of in a second tier of his own, but in that tier of, hey, day 2 pick linebackers, who are the guys the Steelers should target that would kind of fit the right, I guess, spots for them to take, like without reaching too hard for a linebacker when, they like, if you see, hey, 53rd still a little rich when you still got to figure out things in the O-line, receiver, and other things like that.
Yeah, I feel like there is a really nice group of linebackers in a sort of gaggle, I'll say on day 2. Jacob Rodriguez, Anthony Hill, Jake Golday is a big, strong dude. Josiah Trotter is another one. Like, man, you just want to replicate a Landon Roberts. Like that's like a thumper. And he don't necessarily turn and run all that well, but he will punish the run and is a really good blitzer. Kyle Lewis is the opposite. He's a crazy coverage ninja. Yeah. I don't know how he does.
Ninja's a good word for Kyle. I like that.
But he is undersized, but he has never once let it hurt him. And he's really good against the run for his size too. Like that group of 5 guys, I think that's really good value. Like I think you're getting like surefire starter no matter what you do. And in the second round, I like that value. And there are second or third round, I would say. And then there are guys all the way down this class that I think have interesting traits. They're not all finished products, but
right.
Like Perkins is reported as coming in for a 30 visit, was reported Monday. He's fascinating to me. He ran a 4.38 at his pro day.
Freak.
He is not big, but he is tough and strong, man. He was a converted edge rusher, and there's still definitely like just doesn't have the same level of instincts that guys that have been doing it. But physically, the physical package is elite. Bryce Betcher, really, really tough guy, hard hitter. I saw him peanut punch like a 6'5" tight end. Like I like that dude's tough and like really reminds me of like a Robert Spillane kind of linebacker, right? Who's had a lot of success. And then just like all the way down the board, every round, there's guys I think are interesting. Even into day 3, Lander Barton from Utah is another sort of this like linebacker, edge rusher, tweener. He's listed on every board as a linebacker, as an off-ball linebacker. He's 6'5", 240. He's bigger than Nick Herbig.
Ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Okay, so like, but he runs well. Again, a very good blitzer. Both of his brothers are in the NFL. You know, the Steelers like that. Eric Gentry from USC. He's 6'6".
6'6". He's ridiculous.
He plays volleyball in the middle of the defense. You just cannot throw it over him. I can't really even imagine someone like if he's the pole runner in cover 2, how far past him do you have to get to be open? It's like a half the field. Red Murdoch from Buffalo is like a fell through the cracks kind of guy. Didn't have any offers coming out of high school. Went to Fork Union Military Academy, and if you're a Pitt fan, you know you're familiar. And he's a guy that just really plays really good ball, very solid all the way around. So that's why I think like it doesn't necessarily have to be in the second round, third round, fourth round, wherever. But like there will almost certainly be a point all the way down. I'm looking at the consensus big board. Xavier Sori from Arkansas, who made a bunch of plays at the Senior Bowl. He wasn't the best linebacker, but he made a bunch of plays. He was a guy who multiple times I was like, oh, that one, yeah. He's like 300 on the consensus big board. That's like not going to get drafted. And I was like, that guy was pretty good. Jaden Duggar, Pittsburgh guy, balled out at the Shrine Bowl. Probably not going to get drafted. Wes Besanth was the starting middle linebacker for Miami in the national championship game. Probably not going to get drafted. So like, there's tons of talent here. Somewhere with 12 picks also, there will 100% be a point where Omar Khan looks at this draft board and linebacker is the best player available.
And I think that that's going to happen at some point. To me, it's just about when and where. Because if you're sitting there and you're saying, hey, this is the best available, but we could probably get a guy at linebacker who's still going to be valuable to us later in the draft. And you know what, we could trade down a little bit and still get another player at another position of need while still getting that linebacker. Like you said, it's the depth here that's intriguing, because once you get past those guys that, they look more like guys that will either start right away or will be immediate backups who will be primed to start very, very soon. Maybe by year 2 or by the middle of their rookie season. Guys along those lines. But when you get past those guys, those lower level guys that you're talking about, like Harold Perkins at LSU, someone who when I saw him run, I was like, oh man, like that looked even faster than I thought it would look. And you see a guy with the size of an Eric Gentry or a Lander Barton or a Jaden Duggar, all those guys 6'5" or taller. Those are the guys that I think that you look at and you say, okay, let's just take a flyer on this freakishly built or freakishly fast person and see, can we put them at linebacker? Because as we're going to talk about in the next segment too, the Steelers, historically, when the Steelers have been at their best, they have had dogs at linebacker. And not just dogs, but like dogs that define the defense. James Ferrier was the captain of that defense. He was the oh captain, my captain in the middle of it. Ryan Shazier, when the Steelers 2010s defenses were at their best, it was when he was lighting it up. You go back to the 90s and Levon Kirkland and what he meant to the defense. And of course, there's the 70s with the Jacks and Ham and Lambert. And so you go back to the best eras of the Steelers, it's when they've had dominant linebacker play, though wide receiver and several of the other positions are very much at the top of their priority. Getting another dog for this linebacker room, a guy that could step in, and if he's not a leader right now, he can be a guy that's molded into being a leader. That could be I think that is an underrated possibility that the Steelers have to keep their eyes on, especially when, Alan, like you're saying, this is a good linebacker class.
Yeah, and they've also had a lot of success over the years with those bigger guys. Lawrence Timmons was a converted edge rusher. Chad Brown was a converted edge rusher. And so, I think this defensive structure has room, especially if the other guy's going to be Payton Wilson down the road, for them to take a look at one of these big dudes. Josiah Trotter is huge. Jake Golday is very, very thick. These guys are big, strong guys. I think there is room. I know that everybody is sort of hyper focused on, oh my gosh, all the passing game. How are you going to stop the pass? How are you going to stop the pass? I see the NFL coming back around on the running game.
The pendulum is coming, man.
I don't think that you have to be you have to be concerned about your coverage, but I don't think you should sacrifice run stopping at the linebacker position anymore. I don't think that's the way to go. When you look at the teams that are built like the Lions, the Ravens, the 49ers, the Eagles, if you don't have good linebacker play against those teams, you are in a bad way. And I'm talking about against the run. And so, yeah, I think there's a chance to get a real thumper in the middle. And I think that's certainly, if you can get somebody who can do it all, if you go get, Jacob Rodriguez, and that guy's going to be a future captain for you and be a 3-down linebacker, and you use a second-round pick on him, hey, by all means, I don't think that's a bad choice. But if you're doing you're talking about, hey, there's probably someone later, I think a lot of those someone laters are big dudes who can really hit. And I think there's room for that in this defense.
Let's talk about where that room might be. We're going to talk about the guys on the roster that's next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now, you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house, it's you participating in a live market. You could buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by the people. Now, you're no longer just a spectator, play-by-play. You decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, let's talk about who the linebackers are that the Steelers have in the fold. Now, first, I want to talk about Patrick Queen. We'll get to the whole thing, but Patrick Queen is a big talking point in this offseason. Will the Steelers trade him? Omar Khan said, we like Patrick Queen, indicated at the combine it wasn't that likely, but then rumors popped up that the Steelers were looking to trade him, or other teams were looking for the Steelers to trade him. That things happened, but ultimately they didn't. His roster bonus kicked in. He's now unlikely to be moved. Where is Patrick Queen, do you think, in the eyes of his career and how it pertains to the Steelers? He currently sits right now with 1 year left on his deal. He's a $17.1 million cap hit this season against the Steelers. This is the last year of his 3-year contract that he signed back in 2024. Do you see a likelihood or a reasonable possibility for Patrick Queen to play his way into getting a contract extension with the Steelers? Or do you see another just a space being made for another guy to be the leader of this linebacker group soon?
I think this is one of the big remaining unanswered questions of this offseason. I think the Steelers would like to have Patrick Queen sign a contract extension. First of all, it would help with that $17.2 million cap hit, as you mentioned. An extension would knock that down significantly. He has over $10 million in salary remaining that can be converted into signing bonus. The contract was originally written where that was pretty clearly the plan. But he hasn't played up to the level of this contract. And I don't want to say that he's been bad, because he hasn't. But he's being paid like an all-pro, and he hasn't been that either. And I don't think the Steelers are going to want to sign up for more of paying him like an all-pro right now, nor do I think they should. And so is Patrick Queen going to be willing to sign a contract extension where that number comes down? I don't know. I kind of think probably not. I think this probably feels like a situation where he's going to go into the year playing out the final year of the deal, because I don't really see where the deal is. Maybe you see it differently, but if I'm Patrick Queen, I don't want to take a pay cut. I want to go say, hey, I'm going to go have another good year, and then I'm going to go get paid like I feel like I deserve. And if I'm the Steelers, I can't pay him $13 million a year again. That's the average on this deal, because I didn't get $13 million a year out of the last 2 years. So I don't really know how that happens. And then the real question is, okay, so let's say these sides are not coming together on a deal. What does that mean for Patrick Queen's offseason?
Yeah.
Is he going to show up? Is he going to cause a problem about it? I don't know. I don't want to say that he is, but I think it'd be foolish to just assume that he's not either.
I'm with you on that. I think it's a little tough for Patrick Queen right now, because it's like it's a you need to ball out to earn that extension, or you're hitting free agency all over again, and your market's going to be different than it was the last time. Here's the other thing that I've said before too, is that Patrick Queen is also 27 this year. This is the prime of your athletic career, and he has a ton of experience, and I think that he's gotten better with this experience in working the green dot of a defense. This would be a heck of a year for him to ball out, show the world that he's still got it, and in fact, not only does he still got it, he's taking it up a notch and being that leader on the field. And if he does that, if he brings that level to his play, I think that changes everything. The Steelers maybe look at him a little bit different and say, hey, let's sign this guy. Or he says, you know what? Hey, I'm good. Let me hit the open market and let me see what I can get paid handsomely for that. But let's move past Patrick Queen here, because let's say in that situation, the Steelers don't retain him. Then they got to look at their other options here. There are other off-ball linebackers right now before any more free agency moves or the draft. You've got Payton Wilson, who we've talked about. You've got Malik Harrison, who they brought in last year. Cole Holcomb, who originally was brought in to kind of fix the linebacker room, got injured, and then has kind of fallen to the back burner. And then you have Carson Bruner, who they drafted late last year, was a decent special teams player this past year, but is sort of that fifth wheel there in the linebacker room. Where do you see someone emerging from this group that could be part of the long-term answer at linebacker, even if Patrick Queen isn't part of it?
I think that's why drafting one looks attractive, because I don't know that there is one. Payton Wilson, they hope, right? They hope. But he was, he is a good cover linebacker. He was already that going into the 2025 season. The hope was he would become the kind of guy that made Cole Holcomb and Malik Harrison irrelevant. That those guys would have a really, really hard time ever getting off the bench because of how good of a 3-down player Payton Wilson had become. And the Steelers could just play Wilson and Queen 95% of the snaps. And that did not happen last year. Now, I don't want to rule out it happening this year, but I don't think the Steelers should be banking on it either. I think they have to be looking at Payton Wilson as a question mark going forward. He's a sure thing, at least as a piece. But in terms of being like a 3-down player, they should not be counting on that. And so, Malik Harrison, I'll be honest, didn't love the acquisition when it was made.
Yeah.
If you got to find someone to move off of in this group because you got to find a way to get a rookie onto this roster, that's probably the one I would pick. But, he also played a lot of football last year because Payton Wilson couldn't stay on the field. So, I think it's a real question mark. I don't know that there is someone that they should feel like is a piece of this future right now.
I think that's part of why we're looking at this linebacker class a bit harder than in this situation. Yes, they have veteran guys. They have a group of vets that they can come in and play the position, but there is no one dominant linebacker in this group that can play that off-ball position and take over a game, be a dynamic playmaker. And maybe that's why they need to kind of look in this draft class and find a guy in the middle rounds and the late rounds somewhere to do it. Now, here's the other perspective of this. Alan, how far, if you're thinking if you're Omar Khan, you have the GM powers, how far does Sonny Styles have to fall before you start making serious phone calls to trade up? Or do you just think there's absolutely no way he ever gets into a range the Steelers could consider?
I'm so sure it's not happening that I don't even know if I'd be going to Ohio State's Pro Day on Wednesday.
How about that? Now, I'd be going for other reasons because there's plenty of prospects in that group that I like, but I hear you.
I think the three first-round Buckeyes will be off the board by 9.
14? 9?
9. Yeah.
I think that's very fair. Now I think about it, 9 because Tate will be gone at least.
I forgot about. Okay, there'll be 4 of them off the board by
14. That's where I'm. That's my
10, 12, 10? 12. Who's picked 12? Dallas. Yeah,
Dallas.
4 of them off the board by 12.
Man, because Downs is up in there, Reese, Styles, and Tate. Just a heck of a class. You can't pass up on Ohio State, man. They got so many dogs out there. But this is where I get all the mock draft Monday.
Caden McDonald might get in the first round too. There might be 5 of them, but he'll be.
Caden McDonald, I think, is a first round pick in this class. Maybe because people see him as a pure nose that he drops.
It's a bit of a specific scheme fit that'll take him. The right team's got to want him, but yeah, right. I think talent wise, yeah.
But either way, there's been a lot of mocks I've seen where the Steelers trade up to get Sonny Styles. Exactly. I just don't see that being. It would be fantastic.
Sonny Styles is probably going like
much fun, right? Exactly, because he's up way too high. If he gets outside of the top 5, there's somebody else trading up to get him. And with the Steelers' other needs this year, while getting Sonny Styles would be amazing, it just
to me the only position they can trade up for is wide receiver.
Right. If
you're not trading up for wide receiver, you probably shouldn't be trading up. Like it's such a huge need. And in that position, the need is very specific. You have 2 guys who you intend to play every snap of the season, basically, in Pittman and Metcalf. You have to find a guy who can go with them. Linebacker, like we said, you can go any direction you want. So you don't need that guy. You just need a guy. Whereas I think at wide receiver, you can make a lot better argument for them needing that guy, for them to look at the board and say, hey, Boston's going to be BPA, but he's not the right fit. We got to go up to find a way to get Lemon, Tyson, whatever. I think you can make that argument a lot better than linebacker. I just don't see it. There will be one at 21 if they really want one. There will be one at 53 if they really want one. And those guys, like I said, like it's a clean slate, basically. You can get whatever kind of linebacker you want. Just go add some talent.
That's where I think that it could get really interesting for the Steelers is if they go and do it that way. But again, just looking at where the Steelers could be this year, and it's why when I'm looking at your potential trade ups, I wanted to. I know we've been talking linebackers the whole time here, but you're talking about trading up for a wide receiver. When I talk about that now, a lot of people think I'm crazy because, well, they just traded for Michael Pittman. They've traded for DK Metcalf. Why would they go get a wide receiver? Why would you trade up to go get a wide receiver? Why would you not use that in another position? But Alan, and I said this last week with Jenna Harner. I want to keep preaching this until the Steelers either do make this move or don't make this move. But I think it would just be so smart that if you think you have that alpha dog wide receiver, the next wide receiver one of the Pittsburgh Steelers for the next 8 to 10 years, who can be in the top 5 wide receiver conversation at some point, and you get a chance to bring him in with the way that you've reassembled this wide receiver room with Pittman and Metcalf as veteran leaders to set the tone so that he's not walking in thinking I'm the biggest, baddest dude on the planet, the way George Pickens got to, the way that some other guys have gotten to for the Steelers. I just think that is a great opportunity the Steelers could be looking at here. And again, for a position of need and a position of high value in the NFL, and positions of value and trends, that's something Omar Khan is all about.
They're going to throw the ball a lot in this offense. They need a third wide receiver that is equal in talent to the two they already have. That's not some just like tag along position. Like that's not a part-time role. That's the 4th most important starter on the offense, probably. Maybe 5th. You count left tackle. But like it's quarterback and the 3 wide receivers. Those are the most important guys in this offense. And you have a depth chart where there is 18 catches last year between the guys behind Pittman and Metcalf right now. Come on, that's a huge investment. There would not be ridiculous.
To me, it makes a whole lot of sense. That's why I'm still looking at there. But again, we're going to explore. But your point was made. You didn't even need to correct it. But again, this is why I continue to look at that position. But hey, this is also why we're exploring all the angles here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I know I'm going to keep banging the drum of who I think the Steelers should be taking in the first round. And it's a few different options at wide receiver and a few different other positions. But linebacker, keep your eyes on it because the Steelers might just be going there earlier than you think in this draft class. Thanks again for joining the Locked On Steelers podcast. Alan, thank you for joining us here. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Hey, Saunders_PGH on social media, SteelersNow.com. That's where you can find my written work and my podcast, Steelers Morning Rush and Steelers Afternoon Drive, on the Steelers Now YouTube page, wherever you find podcasts.
Thank you, Alan. You're amazing. We love having you here and appreciate you, just like we appreciate all our listeners and viewers. Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, wherever you get social media. My handle's always at Carter Critiques. Read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com. Find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday. Break it down, your Pittsburgh Steelers. Back here tomorrow with more on the Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.